He oversees all phases of the lending and deposit process in branch communities outside Anchorage. Hi, Carl. Would you like to say a quick hello and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Denise. My name's Carl Hines. I've spent the last 18 years with First National Bank Alaska all over the state. Spent some time in Kodiak, moved to Soldotna, Glen Allen, Haines. Now I call Kenai home. As a lifelong Alaskan, nothing makes me more proud than helping Alaskans day in and day out, especially in these uncertain times. The Payroll Protection Program is just one of the many tools the First National Bank has that we can offer to help all Alaskans. Denise?
Thanks, Carl. It's good to have you here today. Senior Vice President and Corporate Lending Director Chad Stedman grew up on the Kenai Peninsula. In his role at First National, Chad utilizes his experience in commercial underwriting and lending to coach First National skilled corporate lending bankers. Hi, Chad. How are you? It's good to have you here today.
Good, Denise.
Say hi.
I'd love to. Well, with over 20 years of commercial lending experience and 10 of those with First National Bank Alaska, I enjoy the banking experience and being a lender to local communities, businesses. That being said, community and family are extremely important to me. I have 6 kids myself and a lovely wife who all of us live here in Anchorage. We love being part of this community and seeing it grow and flourish. And so with the recent pandemic, the PPP program has been an opportunity for us to help and serve and to help those businesses that are struggling at this time. So great and love to be here. And I'll turn it back to you, Denise.
All right. Thanks, Chad, for being here today. Just a couple of reminders before we get started with today's program. All participant mics and cameras have been turned off, but we do want you to participate in today's webinar by submitting your questions via chat on the right-hand side of your screen. About halfway through today's program, our hosts will answer your questions, and we hope to give about 25 to 30 minutes in doing so. But if we don't get to your question, have no fear. At the end of today's webinar, later today, you can find a full listing of all the questions and answers from today's webinar that will be posted on fnbalaska.com/webinar. So Chad, let's get started with you. Can you give us a general overview of the Payroll Protection Program and what it means right now in terms of this latest round?
Absolutely. Let's just kind of go back a little bit. When the latest COVID-19 relief package was passed back in December, what they did is they allocated $284 billion to businesses that were hurting. And these were for some of the most highly impacted businesses during this pandemic situation. Part of that, what they did is that those funds, of course, were to be distributed by banks, authorized 7A lenders, which First National is. And a lot of the terms remained the same this time. They decided to keep the terms the same as 5-year repayment, the 16-month deferment for businesses to be able to have that time to recover and be able to get back on their feet. They really intended for this to help, once again, to help pay payroll. But what they also did is they allowed it to be able to use for other expenses also. So 60% needs to be used for payroll, 40% can be used for your mortgage interest, rent, utilities, worker protection costs, the PPP that might be needed to keep going. Also, they included some property damages that were caused by some of the unrest in 2020. And so there was a lot more expansion to that. With that, there's been a lot of excitement. The first round, there was a lot of excitement, and what happened during the first round, if we remember, there was actually a point where the funds were, people came after those funds quite quickly. They were exhausted. The government decided to fund that money again and kept the program going, and so they were able to refund it. Well, this time, we were just today actually received an update on where they are with funding. Right now, the SBA has reported that 400,000 loans have been approved. $35 billion has been allocated, so about 12% of the funds. So the reason I like to bring that up is because there was a lot of anxiety on the first go-around of Am I going to get the funds? Am I going to get in fast enough for the funds? Well, we're not telling anyone to wait. Go ahead and get those applications in. However, there appears to be sufficient funds in the program for the needs that are out there at this time. We'll continue to update and monitor the situation in case any of that has changed. The other thing that we found out today was that in Alaska, as of the 24th, 905 PPP loans have been approved in Alaska. I'm sure there's a lot more out there that are still going. First National Bank up until that point has already done 497 loans approved. We're actually increasing that quite a bit. We're getting close to 600. We have quite a bit of applications in process. I bring that up because our loan officers, which I'm just extremely proud of, if you could only see the effort that these individuals are doing, they're working weekends, they're working nights. The volume is even more than we anticipated again. And so be patient with them. They're gonna do their best to get it back in touch with you. They're gonna work with you and help you through the program so that the program works for you and you understand it the best way we possibly can. So Denise, I'll turn it back over to you. That's a little bit about what's happening in the program right now.
Thanks, Chad. I know a lot of Alaskans are also really interested in learning a little bit more about the details related to full forgiveness terms. Carl, can you give us a summary about what those forgiveness terms might look like?
Denise, I sure can. And just to touch on Chad's point a little bit, we have an amazing team of loan officers across the state that aren't only accepting applications for the second round, but many of them are helping process the forgiveness for the first round. So the forgiveness terms for the second round remain relatively similar to the first round. And that is that you must keep the same number of employees and the same compensation levels during the covered period of either 8 or 24 weeks. So for those of you who may have gotten the first round PPP loan, you're already aware of what this forgiveness entails. There are a couple of additions, as Chad said, that were added. Some of those expenses that were already eligible were payroll, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. Some of them have been added are IT expenses, cloud and server expenses that people may have incurred to help with remote working. Also, PPE that was needed to allow people to work safely during the time of the pandemic. The payroll allocation piece remains the same at 60%. 60% of the expenses must be spent on payroll expenses. That includes the payroll salaries, as well as benefit and other compensations. So the forgiveness terms, if you were familiar with the first one, are relatively similar, but there are some additions to allow more things to be covered. So with that, Denise, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, so some similarities, but some differences between first draw and second draw. So thanks for that recap, Carl. Chad, I'm wondering if you can give our participants a little bit more information related to eligibility requirements for a PPP loan. Are they the same from, between first and second draw? Are there differences that our participants should know about?
Yeah, of course, I'd love to expand on that. Just to kind of make it clear, if I call something PPP 1, that is the original program that came about last year. If I say PPP 2, then that is this second round, and sometimes it's known as the second draw. The reality is it's really just a new loan for people. And so let's talk about that eligibility and some of the things that have changed this round for PPP 2. The first thing is that they expanded what was some of the types of businesses that could obtain this PPP 2. And so that also, because of that, they actually don't qualify for PPP 2, they actually qualify for PPP 1. They go ahead and they apply for it in the similar manner, but it'll be their first one. So some of those industries that they expanded for were some of nonprofits, some live venues, and also cultural institutions that now can actually apply for this. Like I mentioned, they didn't just open this up for PPP 2 applicants, they also opened it up for PPP 1 applicants, those people who did not receive a loan at all. We were amazed when we opened up our portal how many people actually did not get one the first time. And so it's great to see those people find out that they're eligible and they qualify. And like I said, if you're able to put an application in, a loan officer will talk to you about your eligibility and make sure that you meet all the qualifications. So the next thing that happens is the first criteria is that you have to have used the money, the full amount of the loan, your PPP 1, before you can get a PPP 2. The second requirement is that you're not supposed to have any more than 300 employees for this PPP 2. Remember, with PPP 1, you could have up to 500 employees. The next thing that they wanted to do is they wanted to make sure that those people who were hit the hardest received these funds. So what they did is they said there's a reduction in your gross receipts, gross sales that you have to hit, and that reduction is 25%. Now, there are two ways that you can qualify for that 25%. The first one is a quarter-to-quarter comparison from 2019 to 2020. You can choose which quarter it is that you were most impacted in to hit that 25%. The documentation that is required to be able to show this can be your internal financials that you can supply to the bank. The second thing is, if you choose the annual one, is you can use your tax returns from 2019 and tax returns from 2020. Now, I know the first question is going to be, so I'm going to go ahead and answer it, is I haven't filed my tax returns. That's okay. You can go ahead and submit a draft copy of what those tax returns are going to look like, and we can use that also. The other thing that they did to try to make it a little bit easier is that for those individuals who come back to reapply, they actually can use the exact same information, their payroll information from 2019, to qualify for the amount, the monthly amount. The second thing that they did is they said if your loan amount is under $150,000, you're not required to supply those financials at origination. Now, however, you will be required to supply those financials when you go for forgiveness or if the SBA is asking for them. We recommend that you go ahead and supply that information. It'll make it easier, and it'll get you ready for forgiveness at that time also. So those are the basic eligibility requirements. There's also what they changed the maximum amount. Those people who dealt with PPP 1, there was the maximum amount of $10 million. Really, we didn't have, there wasn't too many people in Alaska who qualified for that $10 million max amount. But what they did is they lowered it to really narrow it down to community businesses, and the maximum amount of a loan is $2 million. And so for joint organizations, it's actually $4 million. The other thing that they did this time, if you remember the calculations, is when you found out your monthly payroll, you could times it by 2.5. Well, they realized that there were some industries that were hit a little bit even harder than other ones. And these were typically in the accommodation and food services businesses. And these have a NAICS code that starts with 72. It's that business industry that you do. And if you're kind of wondering, well, how do I know if I am? A good place to look is maybe on your tax return for your business. You'll find that a lot of time on the top portion of your tax return. If you are one of these harder hit industries, you can actually times that by 3.5 times, which is a great benefit for those industries. And I think it's great because I think about Alaskans, and I look at our restaurants in Anchorage that are really suffering through the ups and downs of this. But I also think of in Southeast Alaska, where a lot of tourism companies have been hit with the cruise lines not being able to come. And so this is a fantastic benefit that will hopefully help those individuals during a dark time. So Denise, with that, hopefully I answered quite a bit of those questions on eligibility, but I'll turn it back to you.
And we're getting quite a few more questions coming in. And just as a reminder to folks who are participating in today's webinar, we have turned mics and cameras off, but you are able to participate in today's webinar by submitting a question via the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. And we're already getting several questions in, and we're printing those off, and we're going to address those hopefully around 4:30 today. So it's nice, Chad, to see that, in the second draw, there are some changes that were made to the SBA's program, particularly that will really help industries impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the state of Alaska. So that's good to know. So now let's turn our focus a little bit to the application process and timeline. Carl, what do folks need to know about the process, and what dates do they need to be aware of specifically?
Thanks, Denise. Just a little bit of background. As Chad said, the bill was actually passed right around Christmas of last year. The program actually opened up for all banks to begin accepting applications as of January 19th. First National Bank was able to help thousands of Alaskans during the first round. And because we knew the demand would be high moving into the second round, we assembled a team of employees and invested in technology to make sure that we were able to handle that demand and started collecting that information. So the day that they were able to be opened, we submitted hundreds of applications. As we move to round two, we need to know that the final day to submit is March 31st. As Chad said, the early indications are there is plenty of money, but we are encouraging everyone to apply as soon as possible to make sure that we are able to collect all that information and process that in a timely fashion. As far as banks and credit unions and other financial institutions that are able to accept applications, those are any of the eligible institutions that are part of the SBA 7A lending program. First National Bank Alaska is certainly one of those. And again, we helped thousands of Alaskans during the first round and have already received over 1,500 inquiries for the second round. The second draw PPP applications do not need to go to the same lender as the first round. So if you went somewhere else with your first round, please bring that to us. We can help you with that. You don't need to go.
Well, the first thing I would invite each person to do as you get ready and prepared to start qualifying for your next PPP2 or even your first PPP1 is first go to a wonderful resource on fnbaalaska.com and look at our PPP page. And you will find a checklist for either a first draw checklist or a second draw checklist. These are wonderful resources to start you on the path. It'll help you understand and identify things that you need to gather before you get into that application. And so the second thing I would highly recommend is I would consult your accountant and have a conversation with them. Talk to them about your financials. Talk to them about your eligibility and qualifying and what you will need. And then as that next step goes, I would go into the First National Bank portal, access it, and start your application. At that point, like Carl said, you will be contacted by a loan officer and have a conversation. Be ready for a conversation with that loan officer. Hopefully you can have a conversation not just about your PPP loan, but also about your overall relationship that you have out with your bank. And we're not just going to offer you one solution. We want to help you with your whole banking relationship and making sure that you're taken care of, not just for this PPP loan, but at an ongoing basis. The other thing that you're going to want to do is if you are a seasonal business and you qualify as a seasonal business, understanding that calculation and how that works. I can't tell you how many individuals we've had great conversations with that they ended up getting a lot more money than what they thought because of the seasonal calculation. We have some individuals who are specialized in that calculation, will help you work through it and understand it. So that's it. That's why we hope that we get your application in soon and we can help you get through the process.
All right. Well, thanks you too for such a great overview. There's a lot of information, a lot of details. And so our approach for today's webinar was just to start with a big picture, provide the nuts and bolts in terms of information. And then we hoped, and as we suspected, a lot of questions were coming in because we know that they're out there, and that's exactly why we're here today, is to answer your questions. So thanks, Chad and Carl, for the great overview. Are you ready to answer some questions?
Ready.
Take that as a yes. All right,
Let's
here's
do
an
this.
easy one. I fish for a living. Can I apply?
Carl, you want to
Absolutely.
take that one?
Absolutely. So many of our customers all around the state are fishermen, whether it be full-time or whether it be part of their many other businesses. So fishermen are more than welcome, and we've already helped hundreds of fishermen. Please apply.
So another kind of tag along to that question is somebody asked, can you share information for commercial fishermen who hire independent contractor labor and issue 1099 forms?
Carl,
you might be the best on this one too.
So Denise, just to clarify, there are multiple ways to be able to calculate the payroll, but employers with 1099s are certainly eligible, and there was specific language that was put into that. And so once you apply, we actually have a special calculator that a loan officer will help you walk you through the steps of exactly how you qualify. And to Chad's point, we've been able to help many people qualify for sometimes more than they expected because of that calculation.
Okay.
You know, Denise, I might also answer the question about what it is, the definition of being a seasonal business. And these are individuals who do not operate more than 7 months out of the year. That being said, you know, there is also a calculation that we look at that they receive their gross receipts that year that were not more than 33.3% outside of their 6-month period. So that is also a really good qualifications for understanding if you qualify for that seasonal.
Okay, so the key there is 33.33% then. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's another question we received related to seasonal. So if a seasonal employer received a PPP loan before December 27th, 2020, can the loan amount be increased based on a revised calculation of the maximum loan amount?
The answer is, Carl, I'll go ahead and take it. The answer is yes, it can be. What you can do is we can ask for a modification of your first round PPP, and you'll just want to indicate that, and you'll actually have to contact your loan officer to request that modification.
Okay.
One of the other questions I just saw in the chat real quick is also the 3.5 times. If this is your first time receiving a PPP-1, the 3.5 times is only for the PPP-2. The first time is all applicants only receive that 2.5 times for that first draw.
Okay, another just general question. Is it possible to apply now and wait to get this funded?
Chad, I'll jump in there. Once the application is submitted, we have a certain amount of time, 10 days, to get the loan documents signed and disperse those funds. So while you can wait to apply, you are risking not being able to secure that money. Once you have applied and it is approved, that there is a time frame which we must disperse that to you. Chad, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I will, Carl. You know, this is really tough for some of our seasonal businesses, especially ones. Actually, one I think of is a guide business, and of course they operate heavily in the fall. And so you think about it, you have that what is called the covered period, and it's a 6-month time period. Well, you would think, well, 6 months should be plenty enough to use those funds. But if you're a seasonal business that is operating in the fall, that's when you're using the majority of those funds. So that is a really tough tough question of when you should apply. As Carl said, you can wait. You can wait a little bit closer to that 31st. We do anticipate there being sufficient funds in the program. However, that is a risk that is there in making sure that you apply.
Okay, keep the questions coming. Here's the next one. If we reduced our staff compared to the 1920 quarters when applying for the PPP2, do we only use the current staff payroll or use the same amount from 2020 Q profit and loss quarter reports?
So I'll answer that real quick. Oh, go ahead. So just to repeat the question, if I understand it correctly, we're asking, should we use can we use the payroll from 2019, or can we go ahead and use the 2020, even though it was reduced? In the law, the eligibility says you can still use the exact same information that you used the first time in 2019. However, an individual might choose, if they had an increase in payroll, to use 2020 numbers also, and they can do that. If you had a reduction in it, I probably would recommend using the 2019 at that point.
Okay.
Carlos, anything you want to add to that?
No, the one thing that I would add is there's a lot of terms that get a little bit confusing, and we do have, again, a whole team of loan officers that are ready to help and assist if you have any questions. But one that has come up regularly is the reduction in revenue number. 25% reduction is a different number than the payroll. So just remember, when you're going through that one, if you have questions, get online. We can answer your questions with a loan officer, but the payroll numbers and the revenue numbers can be confusing sometimes.
And I'll just piggyback on that. Made me think of one other thing. Is a very common question is, does the PPP funds that I received in 2020, does that count towards my gross receipts? And it does not.
Okay, and Carl, I think you bring up a really good point, and both of you have actually touched on this several times, which is we're here to help, right? This is a complex program. We know that Alaska business owners are focused on running their business, and we appreciate that. And what you guys do and what our experts do at First National is they are available and they're able to provide the expertise that you're looking for. So it may seem very daunting, this whole process, but just know that you have folks here, very experienced, local in your time zone, that's ready to pick up the phone and answer your questions. So we're here for you, and you can find all of our contact information on fnbalaska.com, or send us a chat in this webinar and we'll reach out to you directly after today's program. Here's another question that came in related to second draw PPP loans. Can my second PPP loan request be approved by SBA if my first PPP loan request is not in forgiveness approval status with the SBA? Who'd like to take that one?
So I'll go ahead and jump in there. Oh. So the answer is that no, the loan does not have to be forgiven at the time that you apply for your second PPP2. That being said, if the SBA has your loan as in review status, then it will not be, your PPP2 will not be approved until that is completed. Carl, did you want to add on to that?
Just a reminder, there are a number of different differentiations in the program between this loans 150,000 and below and above that threshold. So the loans that are under 150,000 don't even need to have applied for. The ones over will need to have applied for forgiveness before the round two. So that also applies to the revenue reduction requirements. If your loan is 150,000 or below, you'll see some different requirements than if it's above that threshold. So again, our experts are ready to help, but understand there is some different regulations based on the size of the loan.
All right, here's another question that covers a completely different area here that we got from a participant. The question is, I own income property. My business has been impacted by tenants living in Alaska because they don't have work. I'm still responsible for the mortgage, taxes, insurance, etc. Although I was considering hiring an employee or two, I'm just not sure that I can continue to meet my financial obligations if this continues. How can this program help me?
Denise, I can jump in, and the program is specific that it is a payroll protection program and has to do with payroll. So although we've experienced many different situations where Alaskans are having challenges, and we're happy to look at different programs, the payroll protection program is a payroll program as outlined by the SBA. So I'll let Chad expand, but there may be another program or other ways that we can help with at First National, but this is for payroll.
No, Carl is exactly right. This is a payroll protection program, and so that is what the main qualifier is. You know, there are other things that you know, as a bank, we're willing to help and help people with interest-only payments. We're helping them in any way we possibly can. We know other banks are offering programs also for those situations. It is a tough situation to be in. Unfortunately, this program might not be able to solve that issue.
All right. And so if you have questions about other alternatives that might be available to you, we just encourage you to give a lender a call at First National. They'll ask you a series of questions and hopefully point you in the right direction. And so just a general question, somebody asked, how do I apply for this PPP loan? There's an easy one there for you, Chad. Go for it.
Well, absolutely. First, just go to our website, fnbalaska.com. You'll see on the very front page where it says apply here, and and click on that. When you go to that next landing page, I'm on it right now. You're going to see the checklist on your right-hand side, and then you'll see a little tab that says apply now for your PPP loan. Go into that. It'll prompt you to set up a username and password to enter our software program. One thing I'll just remind you of is make sure that you're using a Chrome browser or an Edge browser or one of those supported, not an Internet Explorer browser.
Great, thanks, Chad. All right, another question that just recently came in calculating payroll, can fixed partner owner draws be included?
I'll take it, Carl. They can be. They absolutely can be. The one thing you have to remember is because they are an owner, there is limitations. The first one is it's limited to $100,000 annual in the calculation is the first one, and then it can, which is about $20,833 if I remember correctly, Carl. But it is limited for owners how much they can do, but they can include that distribution as a partner.
Great, thank you. All right, here's another question. If a borrower has provided documentation showing a drop in quarterly revenues of 24.91% year over year, can this be rounded to 25% for qualifying purposes for a second draw PPP loan?
I'll go ahead and take that real quick. You want to go ahead, Carl?
I think the guidance that we have been given from SBA is that 25% is 25%, and we need to stick with that number. But again, the documentation needs to be provided that shows 25%, and we've interpreted that to be exactly that from SBA.
Okay, and so here's another related question to the 25%. For first-time borrowers applying for a PPP loan during the second round, so therefore they did not receive a first-round PPP loan, do they also need to provide a 25% or more reduction in revenue, or does this only apply for second draw applications only?
I'll take this, Denise. The answer to that is if you are going for that PPP one, your first time loan, you do not have to demonstrate that 25% drop in gross receipts. That qualification is only for the PPP 2. For that second draw request, that's the one you've got to show that you had a 25% drop in revenue, either in a quarter-to-quarter comparison or a year-over-year comparison.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of questions about the 25%. Here's a good one, actually. Here's another good one. If a customer owns a restaurant with 2 locations, for purpose of calculating if quarterly revenues drop by 25% or more, do I need to add both stores' revenues together, or can I count each location separately? For example, same taxpayer EIN number for both stores, but there are 2 different locations.
Chad, I can jump in here. Again, when we're looking at qualifications for a PPP loan, there is one PPP loan per entity identification number. So therefore, we need to include all of the revenue, just like we'll include all of the payroll per that entity ID.
And that was, just added a little color to that. That was something that was really confusing on the first one because, the first one they were like, you can only have one PPP loan per customer. Well, we didn't, that was really tough. Was that if I own multiple entities, do I just get one of all of them together or so forth? But as Carl did say, it is one per, the way we interpret it, and we've been explained by the SBA, is it's one per tax ID number.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up. Here's a question related to a participant who had a conversation with their CPA. So understanding that PPP funds and EIDL funds do not get added to gross income, is that true for other local, borough, or state CARES Act grants as well?
I'll grab this one, Carl. This is a pretty complicated one. The first thing I'd probably say is definitely have this discussion with your CPA. The thing we know for sure is that your PPP allocated funds in 2020 are not counted into the revenue. You can look at the other grants that you are receiving. You can look at those, and they have to be segregated. They have to show what the costs are going towards, and that they don't want those to be double counted. They don't want it to be doing it. So they want to make sure that there's a reason that where those proceeds went. And there's some little bit of tax consequences involved there. They did clear up some of those tax things in this second act. But still, I definitely would recommend talking with a professional on other grants that you do receive. Carl, you want to jump in there too on that one?
Yeah, I think it's just important to remember that so many of these rules and some questions such as these, the programs have rolled out so quickly that we're trying to keep up and literally researching, maybe not 24 hours, but at least 18 hours a day. We have people looking at these questions and trying to give the best information possible. And some of them just don't have a clear answer. So as these questions come up, get them to us, get them to your loan officer, but understand that sometimes it's not something that's black and white. And so we are, as many questions as we have received, it seems like every day we get 2 or 3 new ones that we have to go back to SBA or back to somebody else. So some of them we may not have a definitive answer for, and it'll be something that you have to rely on your team of CPA or attorney, whoever it may be, to make a decision that best fits, because it may not be a black and white answer. And that's simply because we're not given a black and white answer from the program.
All right, anything else to add to that, Chad?
No, I agree with Carl. Hopefully what you're doing as you get into these situations is that, you have you surround yourself with good people, a good loan officer, a good accountant, and get good advice for each one of these situations to keep yourself on the straight and narrow and stay out of any pitfalls that potentially could be there.
All right, here's another question that's related to commercial fishing. And I'm pretty sure I'm gonna need a drink of water after I read this question, but it's an important one. So here we go. Our commercial fishing business gives 1099s to the crew. We also participate in oil spill training and have to run payroll for that. In 2020, we trained 8 people. Now, due to medical, 3 of those people will not be training. Oil spill training is not our main income. It's commercial fishing. So in short, we will have the same number of crew for commercial fishing and 3 less for oil spill training. But we did have a reduction in how much was paid to the oil spill training in 2020 due to COVID. So it sounds like I should only put in for the reduction in crew shares. Can you give a little bit of insight on that, Chad or Carl?
I will start off with that, and it may be one that we need to take offline, and happy to follow up. But there's 2 distinctively different questions in here, and one is whether the business, based on the income stream, qualifies as a seasonal employer. And as we talked about in the beginning, the first round of PPP did not clearly identify what a seasonal employer was. Now we have some very clear guidance on what makes an employer seasonal. So first we would look at to see if when those employees were paid, when the revenues were earned, if they qualified as a seasonal employer. Then we would look at matching up the payroll timeframe with the seasonality of that business. So I really think this one's going to be one we probably need to get the numbers and sort through exactly where it's at to make sure that 1, we determine if it's seasonal, and then 2, determine we're using the right number of employees, not only for the loan amount, but to make sure that the expenses in the covered period moving forward will be able to be met based on the new employees.
Okay, and this participant did chime in and they said, yes, we are seasonal. We did not apply for the first round of PPP. But it sounds like there's a lot of other questions that need to be answered too. So connecting directly with the loan officer is probably the best route to go.
Yep, and I'd be happy to make a call directly as well, Denise. So if you want to give me that information, I would be happy to sort through that.
Great. All right. So Debbie, if you can send me your phone number, we will connect you with Carl and he'll provide some additional information for you. So thanks for your great question. I'm sure a lot of folks out there are wondering the same thing. And so here's another question that just came through. Thanks for providing your number there. I appreciate it. So the first EIDL 1,000 per employee was presented as a grant. However, the funds were turned into a loan and were reduced from the PPP paycheck or payback account amount. Has this been addressed? Do you need me
I'll
to read
take
that
that
again?
one, Denise.
Okay.
No, I think I understand the situation. We had many customers who were impacted by this. And I'll just give a little of backdrop on this and what happened. In the original PPP-1 calculation, what happened is we looked at what an individual received as a grant, and then we reduced the amount by the loan amount by the amount that they received in the grant. Well, there was a lot of confusion there, and when it came time to forgiveness, the SBI, this is my interpretation, is I think they realized, well, we don't know who included that calculation and who didn't do that in calculation. So in a blanket approach, the SBA decided to take out the EIDL funds out of every single application that was put in, regardless of if you included it in your calculation or you did not. And so, of course, you can only imagine the perplexity that people had when they said, well, I included it in my calculation. I got $5,000. I reduced my loan amount, and then they did not pay down. I was left with a $5,000 remaining balance on my loan too. This was later rectified by the SBA, and they came out with new guidance that said that all outstanding EIDL balances will be paid off. I'm not aware that we've received any funds at this time for those to be paid off. We do anticipate those funds, and as that happens, those funds will be applied to those loans, and they will be reduced to a zero balance.
Okay.
Carl,
Carl,
anything else you want to add to that? Because I know that was a big deal for some customers when they did not get 100% forgiveness.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. And we'll probably, if we don't already have a question in the chat, come up with one that says, what if I paid my loan off? They had a balance, they paid it off. We are anticipating when we receive those funds, we will be able to redirect those to the customer. So if you did receive forgiveness, your loan was paid off partially, you paid the rest. When those funds are received, we will direct those to you once we receive them.
Okay. So here's another question. Self-employed LLC, do they qualify? Does a self-employed LLC qualify for a PPP loan? Chad? Carl?
Well, yeah, that's a tough one. There's a lot of questions I have on that one. But kind of simply put, the first one I would ask is, did you pay payroll? And kind of coming back to that other one was there actual payroll that was done in that point? In some cases, the distributions to the owner can be counted as payroll also. You'll have to discuss that with your loan officer for how that qualifies and how that works.
Yeah, key term there, payroll, right? Payroll protection.
Payroll. Yep.
Okay. All right. Here's another question that just came in. The question reads, I understand that there is a forgiveness form change for PPP-1 that makes for a simplified application for companies whose loan was less than $150,000, as opposed to the earlier requirement that the loan not exceed $50,000. I can find the form approved by the federal government for the new requirement of less than $150,000, but I can't find the form for Fnba. Can we use the federal form and mail it in to seek forgiveness?
Denise, as anybody that started the forgiveness process with us knows, we do have a portal set up for that, and we have been working with the vendor to make sure that that form is updated to include that most recent form. If there is a question about particular forgiveness, again, I think we can direct that directly to the loan officer, and we will find the best way to collect that information and get it in the portal. But the portal is being worked on being updated for forgiveness, and that is something that's been ongoing as quickly as we can get that updated. So I'll let Chad add more if he has more.
No, Carl is absolutely right. We will be having that form. I think what's great about it is it is a simplified form, and our vendor is getting that ready, and you'll be able to use it through our portal.
And
okay.
I would just jump right one more thing on that, Denise, is that, while that loan, since it is under 150,000 or equal to, that's not a requirement for the second round. So there is some time for forgiveness to let that form get updated.
All right, so we've got about 10 minutes or so left of today's webinar, and we have a lot of questions that have been coming in. I just want to remind folks that if we don't get to your question by the time we reach 5 o'clock, no worries. We're going to compile all the questions that were presented today, and along with the answers, and we will post them on fnbalaska.com/webinar. So, and then we'll also, Chad and Carl and any of our lenders throughout the state are available to answer your questions as well. Here's a question that a presenter just submitted. It reads, an applicant was denied a first round PPP for having taken a $30,000 loan with the SBA. Will they be denied if they apply for this round of PPP?
So I'll jump in, Chad. The eligibility requirements, again, have not changed a lot. So I think we'd have to look at this particular case. And again, it's not a case that First Nationals denying people's request, but certainly making sure that they meet the eligibility outlined by SBA. So if they were ineligible the first round, we would have to look at the specifics and see what had changed, because largely the first draw PPP requests are the same requirements this time as they were last April. Chad, anything to add?
No, that is exactly it. Yeah, the eligibility has not changed. Our understanding and clarification from the SBA has gotten better. And so just like what Carl said, you might want to reapply and just make sure that nothing has changed that could have made your application qualify at this time.
Okay.
Denise, if we could also direct that question, I'd be happy to talk to that individual. If you want to get me a number on that one as well, happy to make some phone calls.
Great, you bet. So to Daniel, who presented that question, please send us your phone number and we'd love to have Carl follow back up with you. Thanks so much, Carl. Here's another question. So this is coming from a new business owner. They purchased the business on August 14th, 2020, and the business was in full operations on February 15th, 2020. Are they eligible for a PPP loan?
I'll go ahead and take that, Denise. And the answer is yes, you are. You do not have to be the original owner of the business to qualify for this PPP2. The reality is, though, is you do want to make sure, you first want to check with the previous owner. Did they apply for the PPP1 program? Did they receive a loan in that case? If so, that doesn't exclude you. You do have the opportunity that you can qualify for the PPP2. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. The first thing that you can do is talk with the previous owner, and you can find out the information that they had, and you could use the original information that they submitted. If not, you could also use the 2020 information, and you could have that on there too, and use that to apply for the loan also. So you definitely want to go ahead and get that PPP application in and get those funds. In some ways, it could be a little bit of a windfall if you weren't counting on that and you brought in new capital to your business, and this is an opportunity for you to make sure that you can make changes and to protect your business.
Okay, here's another question related to commercial fishing. This person asks, I'm a commercial fisherman with no employees. Can I apply using my net profit off my Schedule C?
So we have clear guidance on that, and that is actually from your Schedule C, and it is, I believe, line 31 on the Schedule C, but that's a clear question that and limitations on where they can go, but yes, are eligible if that's a positive number on that line 31.
Okay, a lot of commercial fishermen tuning in today. I'm glad you guys can provide them the information that they're looking for. Here's another question, and it reads, if a customer provides a 2019 partnership return with K1s or a 2019 Schedule C, but wants to use 2020 payroll information, can they do that?
They can, actually. They can do that. They can look at both of those and decide which one they want to put in, and they can actually go ahead and submit that 2020 information as their qualifying payroll information.
Okay. Another question reads, we received a PPP1 loan and also took out an idle SBA loan. Does that disqualify us from PPP2?
Quick answer on that one is no, it does not.
There you have it. All right. Here's a question related to modification. So we took a first draw modification. Are we taking first draw modification requests? And if so, how would First National process those?
We are taking those modifications because what we found in the situation is that many especially the seasonal businesses, and this is the ones who, of course, are going to be impacted by this by the most, is that there was so much happening at the time. They got their money. Maybe they didn't understand the seasonal calculation. And to be honest, that seasonal calculation came out later on. And so many of them either didn't hear about it, they weren't sure if they wanted to do it, what the process might be. And so if you realize that you could have qualified more for that PPP-1 application, then what you need to do is do not go through the portal for that modification, only for PP1 first time ones and PPP2 for your second draw request. Go through the portal. For modifications, you should contact a loan officer directly, and they will help you with the reapplication process.
So the short answer is yes, and we're here to help. All right, great. We have made it through all of our questions, believe it or not, and I don't see any more in the hopper. So Chad and Carl, is there any last thing that you want to convey to Alaskans? Anything to help ease their mind? Anything that we haven't addressed in these last couple of minutes that you want to take some time to address now?
Denise, I'll start and then I'll let Chad finish, but I just appreciate everyone tuning in and asking some really great questions. Like I said, we're getting questions every single day, and we think that we've answered every one of them. And again, tonight, some things surprise us and we get some ones that we have to follow up on. So I think we need to make sure that everyone knows that we have a whole team of lenders and other folks around the bank that are ready to help and assist Alaskans. So get us your questions. We have a portal ready for applications, and we have an excellent website, ffbalaska.com, that will direct you to the right spot, and we're ready to help.
Chad?
And I'll just follow up that, we're excited to be able to offer and help people with their second draw request. That being said, I mentioned it before, I hope that you have a good relationship or you're forming a relationship with a loan officer. They're going to help you not just with this, but they're going to be able to help you with so many other products and services. They're going to be there to help you and answer questions. And so I really hope you're taking this time to get to learn and grow with your local loan officer in your community. And that is a service that we offer. And I think it's so important that that people understand that we are that community bank. We believe in that connection between loan officers and individuals. And First National has invested in people, and people are not cheap, but they're worth every penny of it.
Well, you two, thanks so much. Really appreciate the time that you've given today and your expertise. We just received a comment from an anonymous attendee, and I think it's the perfect way to end today's webinar. And the comment reads, as a local business owner, I want to say thank you to First National Bank Alaska. You guys have helped me and my employees. So I think, as a First National Bank Alaska employee, that's what we do. It's who we are, right? We're proud to play that role in the community. And we have loan experts, and not just loan experts, but financial experts on lots of different levels throughout the state. And we're here to help Alaskans succeed, especially during challenging times. We're here during good times and bad times, and we've demonstrated that history and our commitment to Alaska for now. We're going into our 100th year, of helping Alaskans. So I think that that's just an excellent way to end today's webinar. If you would like to rewatch today's webinar, you can certainly do that on First National Bank Alaska's Facebook page, because I believe we're streaming there live. Again, we're going to compile all the great questions that we received today, and we're going to post them on fnbalaska.com/webinar. And if you go to fnbalaska.com, just in general, we have pushed all the information related to PPP to the top, because we want it to be easy. We want you to find the checklist. We want you to find the answers that you're looking for. And if all else fails, pick up the phone, give us a call. We're here to help. So I think that's a wrap. Thanks so much, everybody.
See you, everyone.